All right, so today we're going to be looking at this interview that Imran Khan gave with Jazeera English. And just to kind of set the stage, Khan's facing possible arrest, tons of legal cases. But despite all that, his party PTI still seems to have just a massive amount of support. So we're going to be kind of unpacking all that in today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, on one hand, you have Khan saying that PTI has like a 70% approval rating. But then on the other hand, the government is cracking down on PTI members and accusing them of basically inciting violence, destroying property. So right away, you can see that there's this clash of narratives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes this such a fascinating interview to look at. We're going to be looking at how Khan responds to these accusations, his view of the role of the military, and of course, his overall vision for Pakistan. So one of the most striking things that Khan does in this interview is just completely deny that his party was involved in any violence. And he even goes so far as to bring up the time when he himself was shot, emphasizing that his supporters did not retaliate.
It's a really powerful point. Like, he's basically saying, we've been around for 27 years. We've never engaged in violence. Like, this isn't us.
Right. And yet the government's narrative is very different. They're saying that PTI is responsible for all this unrest and that Khan is the one riling everybody up. So I'm curious, how does he respond to that?
He doesn't stop at just denying it. He takes it a step further and calls for an independent investigation into all the violence. Particularly, he emphasizes those incidents that took place at like sensitive locations, places like the Corps Commander's house.
Yeah, that's when things get really interesting because he even questions how protesters could even reach a place like that, which should be heavily guarded, seemingly without anyone trying to stop them.
Exactly. And he seems to be implying that there was some sort of, orchestrated effort maybe to make PTI look bad. And he challenges the authorities to release the CCTV footage. Let's see what really happened.
It's a bold move for sure, especially in this current climate. And as we kind of keep going deeper into Khan's perspective here, it seems pretty clear that he thinks there's something more going on here than meets the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. And this brings us to, I think, one of the key aspects of what Khan's saying, which is this role of the military establishment in Pakistani politics. He specifically names the army chief and says that this person has a lot of power and even seems to have some kind of personal problem with him.
He even suggests that the army chief is worried about being replaced if Khan gets back into power.
It's a very bold claim, especially given the history between the military and civilian governments in Pakistan.
Yeah, it really makes you think about just how much influence the military has.
Yeah.
And whether Khan's assessment is accurate or if it's just some kind of political maneuvering.
That's a great question, and something I think is definitely worth thinking about, as you keep up with Pakistani politics. What do you think? Let us know down in the comments.
And before we move on, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. And if you're really loving what we're doing here, think about supporting us on Patreon. You can find the link down in the description.
So we've been looking at Khan's take on the accusations and the military's role. But let's take a little detour and think about his reflections on his time in power. Does he have any regrets?
He does say in the interview that if he could go back, he would have called for re-elections right away instead of trying to lead this coalition government with such a tiny majority.
Yeah, he definitely felt held back, especially when he tried to make changes, reforms, or go after people he thought were corrupt. He really seems to believe that a leader needs that strong mandate to govern effectively and actually bring about real change.
He even uses this analogy to cricket, which I thought was interesting. He compares it to being a good batsman, but having a weak team. You just can't score runs that way.
It's a pretty clever way to explain the limits he felt as prime minister, but it also makes you wonder, what would he have done differently if he did have that strong mandate?
Well, that brings us to this really core part of Khan's political philosophy, which is this idea of rule of law. He's just adamant that Pakistan needs a strong and impartial legal system. That's the key to reaching its full potential.
Yeah, and he's been saying this for decades, 27 years to be exact. He argues it's the basis for tackling corruption, attracting investment, making sure society's fair. He even compares Pakistan to Dubai, asking why Pakistanis invest so heavily there when their own country has so many more resources,
It's a really thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
What is holding Pakistan back? And for Khan, it's that lack of rule of law. If everyone was truly equal before the law, no matter how powerful, then he thinks Pakistan could really thrive.
It's all about a level playing field, right? But then there's this other part of his argument, this alleged interference from the military.
Exactly. He claims that even as prime minister, He wasn't fully in control, especially when it came to dealing with corruption. He specifically points to organizations like NAB, which is supposed to be independent, but he says was heavily influenced by the former army chief, General Bajwa.
He even alleges that General Bajwa had control over the FIA too, and that this control is what prevented him from actually taking action against certain powerful individuals who he thought were corrupt.
So basically, he's saying that as prime minister, he was
Yeah.
kind of hamstrung by these outside forces.
Yeah.
And that's why he couldn't fully keep his promises.
That's a really bold claim and definitely adds more to this whole story. But it also raises a really fundamental question. How can you have true accountability, true rule of law, when there are these powerful forces at work?
That's something for everyone to consider, especially anyone following Pakistani politics closely. We want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Khan's claims? What do you think about his vision for Pakistan? Let's keep this conversation going. Leave your comments down below. Okay, so we've heard all about the accusations, his views on the military, his time in power, and his hopes for the future. But where does all of this leave him, and more importantly, where does it leave Pakistan?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Right now, Khan is under a lot of pressure. Possible arrests, legal cases, a strong opposition who want to keep him out.
And yet he still seems so determined, still holding those rallies, speaking to supporters, challenging the government. You almost get the sense that this adversity fuels him somehow.
It does feel like he sees himself as having this mission, 27 years fighting for this particular vision for Pakistan, in and out of power through setbacks and successes. But that core belief, that rule of law is the answer for Pakistan. That's never changed.
And I think that's a big part of why people connect with him. They see him as someone who speaks truth to power, even when there's a personal cost. And whether you agree with him or not, you can't deny that he has a powerful message. And that message seems to really resonate with a lot of people in Pakistan.
Yeah, it speaks to that desire for change, for a system that's fair, that holds everyone accountable no matter who they are. So I think despite everything he's facing, it would be a mistake to count him out.
He's a skilled politician, charismatic, and he definitely knows how to get people on his side. I guess only time will tell what the future holds for him and for Pakistan. But I think we can say for sure that Khan, his ideas, his vision for rule of law, it's all going to continue to have an impact on Pakistani politics for quite a while.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Imran Khan's perspective. We've looked at the accusations, the role of the military, his time as prime minister, and of course his hopes for Pakistan's future.
It's been fascinating, and we hope you found it insightful. And as always, we encourage you to think critically, come to your own conclusions. What do you think about Khan's claims? His vision? What resonates with you? What questions do you still have?
Tell us in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going.
And before we go, a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to our channel for more explorations like this one. And if you want to support our work and help us bring you more deep dives, consider becoming a Patreon member. The link is in the description.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep learning.